Welcome everyone to this week's episode of PEPTalk, Productive Environment Podcast. This week we are joined by one of our very own certified productive environment specialists, Coach Karen Lynch. And Barbara and I are here together. We cannot wait for you guys to hear Karen's story. It's going to really touch, if not you personally, someone in your life is going to be really, really blessed and benefit from this particular conversation. So I'm Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute. I am in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, and I'm not quite sure exactly where Barbara is today. So remind me where you are, Barbara.
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute, and I think I'm in Salisbury, North Carolina, but I'm not really sure. Somewhere between Western North Carolina and home. So,
Been in Western North Carolina for a couple of days visiting friends, right?
yes.
Yes. So good to have you. And then, of course, Karen, let everybody know where you're joining us from.
Well, I know where I am. I am in Burlingame, California, about 15 minutes south of San Francisco. So glad to be
There
here.
we go. There we go. Okay. So you guys saw the title. Let me bring it back up for a quick minute. You saw the title, How Karen Became the CEO of Her Father's Life, Organizing Through Dementia. So we were just kind of recapping or discussing kind of how we met, how Karen came into our lives and her background and her experience in paper management and her personal thoughts about paper management and how that eventually led to her becoming one of our certified productive environment specialists, and then eventually basically truly becoming the CEO of Her Father's Life. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of where that name came from, because we had some discussions about that, and some of you may be thinking or struggling with the same thing. So that's a lot. So Karen, if you want to just jump in, give them a little bit of your background, because you do have some background in paper management. So share your background and kind of how you ended up here with us.
I do. Thank you. And thank you for having me both, Barbara and Andrea. I really appreciate it. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world managing sales teams. And the last 8 years of my corporate career was working for a document storage, information management storage company. So we stored, like literally stored boxes of paper. We did transfer of paper into digital files. We did online backup. So everything that had to do with information, we did. And I left that role after my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And that was in 2013. And actually I had a pulmonary embolism. So I was reevaluating my life and I wanted to do more and be closer to home. I have a degree in psychology and I became a certified life coach. So I was really doing a lot of coaching around helping people let go of things emotionally, kind of emotional baggage. And I went into professional organizing. And I am so grateful because I can't remember I think it was during COVID, I came across the productive environment and thought, okay, the one thing I absolutely hate organizing is paper. And so the irony is, working for an information asset management company, that's all I was dealing with was paper, but it wasn't me doing it. It was, the employees, it was everybody else but me. I just kind of saw the 60,000 foot level of the cost and the expense of managing information. And I didn't like to deal with it. But when I came across productive environment, I thought, oh my goodness, this looks like something that I really need. I like systems of organization, and that's how I operate. I need that for my brain. I need to be able to put something in place. And coming across this system was the thing that I needed it was kind of the aha moment of, this is how I'm going to manage my information. It's right here. And it's so easy. So that's how I came across productive environment.
Yeah. And I remember we have, like I was saying, we have a little video clip of you talking about that. You're like, look, my kitchen was organized. My house was organized. My mudroom was organized. Like, you would be what somebody would look at and say, oh, she's got it together. She's extremely organized. That was definitely was and is you. But you said the only thing that I didn't have together was my paper, which is ironic. As you just said, you came from that industry, but then you pointed out that wasn't your role. You weren't the one organizing the paper, and it wasn't your paper. So,
right. Yeah. And it's funny because looking back, I have a new appreciation because we had employees, I was the front facing, I was the director of sales. So I would go out with one of the account executives to a client and talk to the client about what their concerns were, what's working, what's not working. Those are the two questions I would ask. And they would go into these, we have so many boxes and we don't know what's inside and all these different things. And I would be, I would hear it and I would digest it and think, I'm glad that's not my issue. But then I would come home and I'm like, I've got piles of paper everywhere. And it wasn't that I needed to access them. I just had a hard time letting go and not sure of what to let go of.
Yes.
It was kind of conflicting.
Which is extremely common with our clients. Barbara, you look like you were going to say something a second ago. Let me give you a chance to chime in.
Well, I just wanted to say that's, there are millions of people literally like that. And in spite of the fact that we were told we were going to go to the paperless age, that has not happened. And in fact, now it's actually gotten more difficult to do paper because we're trying to do digital at the same time. A lot of people thought that digital would solve the problem and then they wouldn't have to deal with the paper, but they still have all the paper prior to digital, which is the hardest to deal with. I've been dealing with that myself in my own life. That's the last little thing that's left, is the 40 years of being in business that I haven't dealt with. And so it is just, so Karen, having you here to explain to people how important it is to get a system in place now so they'll be prepared. Because whether it's your own stuff that you're trying to organize or whether you end up, we never know who else's we're going to end up. So, we love the word system for saving you space, time, energy, and money. And you've seen how that works. So glad you're here today, Karen.
Thank you, Barbara. I always tell clients when I'm working with a client, when I would work with clients to organize a pantry or a closet, we can look in there and I can see patterns. I can, if they were organizing their late parents' home, I could see patterns. I could see the expression. I could see the emotion on their face. And I could, as a coach, ask questions about what it was about those items or see trends and ask questions and then allow the client to make decisions to let things go. But when we're talking about things in the closet or in the pantry, these are things that typically a client brings into their house. They have made a decision to bring it into their house for one reason or another. They bought it, they were acquired, something was given, whatever it was, it came into their home. And I think the difference between information, whether we're talking digital, paper, or even photos, we get that stuff coming to us every single day, whether we ask for it or not. It comes in our mailbox. It comes in the form of a text. It comes in the form of an email. Maybe it's a flyer that's left on the door or the window. We get things coming at us and we have to make those decisions. And rather than make those decisions, people tend to kind of push them off to the side. They'll deal with it later. So that's what makes it hard, is that we don't have the control because we're not the gatekeeper. The information keeps coming whether we ask for it or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's one thing to do that for yourself and your own household. You are a wife and a mother of 2 boys, and you had to manage your own. So we call that the home office for the business of life, or the home office for business and life, if you're a business owner. So you joined the CPS team, the Productive Environment Institute, and you took control of your own space. And we've got before and after pictures of your space. And it's like, yes. And you love systems. People that love systems, they really gravitate to what we do, because it's like, if you have a lot of clutter around, it's most likely not your fault, because we're not taught these systems. We're just not taught these systems growing unless, Barbara learned them out of necessity, being ADD, ADHD, right? She had to create these systems, these particular systems, to function. And so you did that for yourself. And so you've been managing your own home, and then your father became ill.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to talk a little bit about that? And we talk, the title of this is Organizing Through Dementia, and kind of what that was like. Because let me just say, we got to be a fly on the wall during the end of his life. We didn't know your father, but we saw when he was still living, and you would go visit him, and you had opportunities to talk to him about stuff. And we'll share, if you want, we'll share your Facebook group link in the description of our YouTube channel, because you really chronicled the last phase of his life really beautifully. And it was endearing to watch that happen. And you chronicled you actually dealing with his paper and his stuff. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. So it really started, my mother passed away in July of 2016, and a month before she passed away, she had cancer, and I watched her suffer for 3 years. I remember her asking her, because when I took her to the hospital, I had asked her, I said, what is it that you see for yourself, for the next few weeks, months, years that you have left? And she says, I don't have that time. And I said, well, how do you want your life to be? And she says, I don't want to be in pain. And I remember asking her, so why are you holding on to the pain? She said, I'm your father. I'm worried about your father. Who's going to take care of your father? And in that moment with her, I blurted out, I'll take care of him. And I made that commitment. And unbeknownst to me, and I think that that's what really held me to make sure that I did the best I could for my father. And within 2 days of her passing, my brother called and said, you need to come see what's going on with Dad. He has a bunch of mail piled up and he doesn't know what to do. And it was at that time, I had been so focused on caring for my mother those last 3 years that I realized that there were some cognitive issues. And he was okay. I'm just kind of forgetful. But when 2020 came around, and he was, we were shelter in place, I really saw the cognitive decline. But between those years of 2016 and 2020, I realized my mother did everything for my father. She knew where, she had all the files were organized, everything was done, but he never ever paid a bill, didn't know the difference between a receipt and a statement, didn't know where none of that. So I did all of that under his watchful eye. And asked him questions. But in 2020, it was significant. The dementia had really set in, and I had no choice but to go in and take over. And I asked him if it was okay. And at that time, I had to ask. It's just a very interesting role to be in, to be the daughter yet be, kind of the parent. I had to ask questions of the attorney, whether there was a durable power of attorney, and all of a sudden I just kind of jumped in. My dad really, at that point, my mother and I were very much alike. He would call me Maureen. So I really saw the decline.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And now I forgot what the question is, because I'm kind of going.
Well, I have another question too. Kind of how it happened, where you kind of ended up in that role. And some of those things I knew, some of those things I didn't know. But another key to this, another piece of this, is that it wasn't the paper and the information. He was a business owner, and
Yes.
and he owned property. I mean, this was like complicated stuff and legal stuff, right?
Right. There were a lot of complicated things going on. So he had a business. He also had several, a number of assets that brought in cash flow. And he also had some investments in assets that he had partnerships with. And so it was really, it's interesting because, growing up with your parents, you don't really know what's going on financially or business wise, right? You just kind of sit back and you don't want to pry, or you want to be nosy.
Yeah.
But at the point where I said to both my brothers, I'm the middle child. And I said, both my brothers, I need to do something. And they both said, you handle it. I did call the attorney. I did have a conversation, and the attorney that he had is the same attorney I have, which is I'm grateful for, and same with the accountant. And at that time, we talked about the cognitive decline. We talked about what the possibilities were, and both the attorney and the accountant felt that a durable power of attorney would be good. And my father sat in on all the calls with them and agreed to basically hand me the keys to the car, over to the car to drive the financial. And then as soon as I had that okay from my father, and I had that document, that I felt the confidence to be able to do what I need to do. And yes, there were, multiple tax returns. There were a lot of different things. There were multiple, file cabinets and papers and things like that I had to do. And all of this was at his house now, and he lives close by, or he lived close by. So the hard part was, knowing where to go to get that information. But then he also had dementia. So when I showed up one day and he had taken a lot of papers and put them in the recycling bin. And
Oh,
these are
wow.
all things that should have been shredded. So then I started migrating files to my home. So there were a lot of things that kind of, ebbed and flowed along the way. But
Mhm.
at some point I had to, we had to have the conversation about moving him into assisted living. It just got a little bit dangerous.
Yeah.
But in the course of all that, what I will say, when I talk to people, and I have friends that are going through what I went through, we are the sandwich generation. The first thing I say is, if your parents still have, the ability to make some decisions, and they're cognitively impaired, but not, full dementia, ask for a durable power of attorney, ask to see the records, ask where the papers are, ask if, to be
Yeah.
able to, it's hard for parents to control. My father had a hard time letting me even sort through the mail. He didn't want to give up that control at first. And then he realized, I'm here it just makes your life easier, less for you. And really the focus on you have more time to enjoy your life.
Right, right. And that really goes into the whole thing that we've been teaching, since Barbara's been teaching for 46 years. Clutter is postponed decisions. We all think we have forever to live and forever with our parents, right? So don't postpone taking the time to make those decisions now if you're able to. And then also the concept of a finding system. We call our system it's not a filing system. It looks like a filing system, but it's a finding system. And so you had the ability to go in and find the information that you needed. And he was still there, maybe not all there,
Right.
mentally the whole time, but that's one of the things that I'm grateful for. My mom is sitting in the background of this. She's in the green room, as they say on TV, of this session. And she'll be 83 on Thursday. And because of her being part of PEI for the last, I don't even know how many years, Mom, but she has created a finding system for the important information that I need to know about and that my siblings need to know about. So that is such an incredible gift. So everybody listening, if you have an opportunity, if you're my mom's age, and you're still, give that gift to your adult children and adult children who are mine and Karen's age, help start that process if you can.
Yes.
I mean, Barbara, I know you've been working on your stuff for what you're leaving your children is literally I don't want to call it a paint by number, but it's like exact directions. And Barbara, if you want to unmute and share this, one of the things that comes up a lot is when we lose a parent, and then you feel guilty about getting rid of the stuff. Barbara, you have left explicit instructions about certain things, giving your family permission. You want to share about that?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
have a file cabinet up in the attic that has 40 years worth of clients. And one day I started to go through it, and I don't know. I thought, well, I might want this someday. Maybe I want to write a book. And it was fun. It was fun to look and remember things that I hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot about that client and all that. And I thought, well, I really don't have to throw this away because it's in the attic. It's not causing any problems. But I don't want my children. So there's a big sign on the side that says, when Barbara dies, just call the junk man, and there's some others too. I've separated the files into what they specifically are. And there's one file drawer that's purple, my favorite color. You can see I have it on today. And it's the purple files. And it says, in case of Barbara's disability or death, here's what you need to know. And it's the finding system. And I've done a finding system both with the paper part and with the digital. One of the things that's interesting is when I first started this, I asked my stepdaughter, who would be the executor, whether she wanted paper or digital, and she wanted paper at that time. So I had it all in a paper filing system. But now, because the world is changing so much and so many companies are forcing you to do digital, and it's easier to share it and whatever else. So there really has to be both in many cases. And so we could turn it all digital, but she's very comfortable with paper. And there's a lot of people in the 45 plus that really like paper. My license plate for years said less paper. It didn't say paper less. It said less paper, because there is a lot that we don't need, but having it, being able to find it, and we use Hemphill's principle all the time. If you don't know you have it or you can't find it, it's of no value. So
That's right. That's right. So we like to say almost paperless. You don't have to go all the way paperless, but almost paperless. Yeah. So that's, yeah. Go ahead, Karen.
I love that, Barbara, because, that is one of the things that people don't think about. And whether you've read, whatever book you've read about, clearing out and getting rid of things before you pass, that was one thing that has been kind of a struggle for, not for me, but for my brothers, and arguing with my brothers, like what I know what we can let go of, and I know what we need to keep or what we need to sell. Not that we need to keep anything, but, it really is having that conversation. And I keep thinking to myself, my mother wrote out one note that said, Sean, my brother, Toby jugs. So she had this huge Toby jug collection. So we knew that was going to go to my brother, and I had all the jewels. That was it. But I kept thinking, like, why didn't she just say, get rid of everything else? Just donate it all. There was no instructions. They left with no instructions, which was a little bit frustrating, which leaves me kind of not guessing, but making the best decision that I think. And then having both my brothers say, well, maybe, and it's, here are the keys, you do it yourself, and they don't want to do it. So it's not causing any tension, but it kind of just delays the process. We want to be efficient about doing this.
Yeah.
But I like your solution.
Yeah.
I remember one time that there was a client that I had, and her mother had died, and she was so sad that she hadn't asked her mother whether she wanted to be buried with her wedding ring. So they're educating your children about what you want. I think it's such a wonderful gift that you can give your children, because there is so much guilt. And I have sat with so many hours with people just grieving over the loss of someone they love, but also pretty mad that they were left with such a mess, which wasn't really necessary. There's a lot of it you can't help. I mean, even if things are organized, all the things that you dealt with, Karen, with all the different corporations and all that stuff, it's complicated. But a lot of the complication is caused simply because the parents and the children didn't make the decisions that could have been made at that time.
Right. And it's interesting, Barbara, you bring up a point, because I just had that same thought last week. And I made the decision to move my father into assisted living January of 2022. And he was in assisted living that transitioned to memory care. Well, within 5 months, by June, 6 months, he was in memory care. And I kept thinking to myself last week as I was going through his home, going, why didn't I just, like, when I packed him up and moved him into assisted living, why didn't I take more action on the house? I got rid of what I call the low-hanging fruit. I pulled out as much as I could to donate and give away to charity and all that. And I thought I did a good job. But then I waited until my father passed, which I thought, why was I doing that? That was kind of silly in retrospect. And I think a lot of it was just the guilt of kind of, not, if he's still alive, I kind of want to, is honoring my father.
Yeah.
So what I've done now, I'm back in the house, and now what I'm doing, my mother would have wanted us just to donate everything and not have an estate sale. She would say, do not sell anything, put it out to the world. And so on Wednesdays in my Facebook group for the last few weeks, I have been posting photos of things that I've taken out of my father's home, and asking the question, what did I do with this item? Did I keep it, donate it, toss it, sell it? And I love seeing what people thought I did with it. And then on Thursday, I reveal what I did and why. And I've been kind of putting that energy out there when I go into the house. What do I want to do with this? Where does this belong? It belongs somewhere in the world, not necessarily in the garbage, and not arbitrarily just donating and all. But I love giving deliberately. And I had the chance to, and I love how universe works. Last August, my husband and I were at Filoli Gardens for summer nights. It's a beautiful estate. My mother knew the woman that lived in that home before she donated the estate. And I was in the library, and there was a display, and I said to the woman who was the curator, or to a volunteer, I said, I'd like to make it, do you guys accept donations? I know that there's beautiful things in the home. And she said, talk to the curator. He's sitting right there. Well, he was right behind me. He and I chatted, and he's come out to the home several times. and they've taken things, and we've been able to donate some beautiful items to Filoli. So on Christmas, when we went there to tour the home and the estate, there were the items on display, which I
Wow.
love that energy. People, I think that clients have a hard time letting things go because of the emotional attachment or the guilt associated with giving something away. But there's always somebody out there that has a need
Mm-hmm.
and a desire. And I know we're getting off paper, but that was part of it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of involved.
Yeah.
You know,
The one thing I want to say here that I think is, because I just had a conversation last week, I was giving a speech, and the woman was saying that she couldn't find anybody to take the things that she had. And so, but she was paralyzed. And I don't think that our parents want us to sacrifice our lives for their stuff. So you do the very best you can to find homes for things. My mother-in-law used to say, I want everything to have a happy home. You do the very best you can. But if you can't, then let it go, because that's a gift to your parents. If your parents were here and they saw that you were paralyzing your life
Yeah.
because of their stuff, I don't think that's what they would want.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I will say that the one thing I've learned, and my brother and I are trustees. So it was an interesting experience to take care of my father. But I will say you are 100% correct, Barbara. If my mother were alive, she would say, are you kidding me? Why are you taking all of your time and energy from your family, from your husband and your children to take care of your father? That's not your job. I think that we feel a moral obligation, but I will say that that is one thing that can easily happen. And that's what happened to me. I spent so much time caring for my father. I don't regret the time that I spent with him, but there has to be a balance. There has to be some give and take. It was really hard on my marriage, and it was, and things are good now, but it was really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good for you to acknowledge that and share with others who may be approaching that as well. I do have a question for you as we kind of wrap up. I was talking to one of our clients on one of our boot camp calls last week, and she had said that she was finally thinking she was ready to release and I want to ask what you did, all of the cards, when her parents had passed separately, but when they had, and she had all of these, thinking of you and the condolences cards and all of those things. She just has had them for years, and she says she finally thinks she's ready to let them go. So I'm curious about how you handled that.
Well, that's funny because I didn't hold on to the condolence cards from my mother, but my father did. And
Mm,
after my father passed, condolence cards came in. I actually let all of those cards go. After acknowledging, those who sent cards, I let them all go. It
yeah.
is, you know, I did keep two though. And the only reason I kept those two, it's because I wasn't quite ready to let them go. But I kept those two because they had very, very specific stories about my mother that to me were very touching. And a few years ago, I went through and got rid of all of the birthday cards my husband gave me, over the past 35 years, and let those go. I kept only the ones where he actually wrote something. And it sounds terrible, but it's so easy to get a card from Hallmark and just sign love Karen or love whoever and hand it to somebody. But something that tells something meaningful or a story, I think is worth holding on to for a period of time until I'm ready to let it go. And only that
Yeah.
individual knows when it's time. But for the most part, I think that holding on for a period of time, breathing
Yeah.
them and ask yourself what will happen, let it go. I have.
Yeah. I think
And
that's
I
great.
also think the
Yeah.
person who sent it to you, the person who sent it just wanted you to know how much they cared, and they would not want you to be burdened by it. I mean, they really wouldn't.
Yeah.
And so letting it go is okay. And Karen, I did exactly the same thing you did with both my mother and father. I kept the ones that had stories in it.
Right.
And they're in a plastic bag and they're labeled and whatever, and so my kids know that when they're they don't have, it doesn't have the same meaning to them, it's easy for them to let them go. So
Right.
Right.
I love that, Barbara. I love how you think of what others would want of you.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
did have there was a lot of letters and cards for my mother. She was a big letter and card person. And I kept one card from her that said how proud she was of me, and I use that as a bookmark. So
that's nice. That's lovely. Well, I want to let me just share your website here. Ed's put this together for us yesterday. So CoachKarenLynch.com, and they can access your scorecard on that site. Is that correct? Okay.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So that's a way. Karen has her own productive environment scorecard. And so it's a way for you to kind of take an assessment of your own space. And then also maybe as you're going through it, be thinking about a parent or a family member, be thinking about how would you score that, how would you score them on as far as how accessible information is. That's the kind of the keys on the scorecard. So check out CoachKarenLynch.com. She helps because now you've done this yourself and you have all of this history with dealing with paper and you're a certified productive environment specialist. You are overqualified. You're more than qualified to help people deal with the same issue. So guys, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I want to, ask some more questions. I want to go deeper. I want some help with this. Reach out to Karen at CoachKarenLynch.com and you can get more information about her, fill out her scorecard and connect. So Karen, I want to share one more thing for us. So productiveenvironment.com/webinar. You guys want to go learn about our office transformation and our digital transformation boot camps and our program where we teach people how to systemize and organize their information with action and reference, the two categories that it all comes down to. So go check that out. But Karen, do you have one thing that you would leave people with? Either, I'm just thinking it's either something you wish you had known or wish you had done differently, or something to make sure that people, if you don't do anything else, do this one thing. Is there something you can share on that?
Oh, there's a bunch of things. I think the one thing is to get a system in place.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with the parent or your loved one, get your stuff in a system, get that system in place so you're up and running. So even when you are in the same boat that I was in, that you're able to pick up and go. And I'm so in that position. Very grateful.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Pick up and go. That was your post today in your email. Your about being able, because you live in California. And so all of those fires and stuff that are coming through, people need to pick up and go. And we have hurricanes where I'm from and other things too. So that's really important.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Tony's one of our, she's a specialist in training, certified productive environment specialist in training. She said, thank you for sharing your heart and experience, Coach Karen, valuable insights, tips, and wisdom. Thank you, Tony. And she also probably has a pick up and go because she lives in Slidell, Louisiana. So they also, yeah. So everybody needs one, no matter where you live. Like, can you quickly gather what you truly need? For me, it would be my two dogs. I mean, that's it. That's probably all I'll be able to handle to get out the door. So, but having those things, having important information online, having, Karen, you do something with photos, to help people be able to access their photos from anywhere, anytime. So having those systems in place. So definitely reach out to Coach Karen and check out our webinar as well. And Barbara, any closing thoughts? I'll let you have the last word.
Well, I'm just thankful to Karen for coming because I think her message is so important and there's so many people who need it. So thank you for sharing, Karen.
Thank you both for being in my life. I appreciate and I'm grateful for both of you.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you. And we will post anything we mentioned, we'll have posted in the description box. Bye, Barbara, on our YouTube channel. So guys, go subscribe to our channel and like this video and share this video with someone that this could really benefit and help. So we appreciate you all and we'll see you on the next Pep Talk.